You know that cozy little coffee shop on your corner? You know the people, you know the menu. It's familiar. Now picture a giant like Starbucks or Apple. I mean, beyond the obvious difference in size, what really truly separates them? What happens the moment a business decides to step outside its home country?
All right, let's dive into that. Here's our roadmap. We're going to start by defining these two very different playing fields. Then we'll get into the weeds on the big complexities that pop up, different rules, cultures, and all that. And finally, we'll tackle the big question. With all those challenges, why bother going global in the first place?
So first things first, let's get the core concept out. You can really think of this as playing on your home field versus competing on the world stage. It might be the same sport, business, but the arenas, well, they couldn't be more different.
Right, so on the home field, it's pretty straightforward. Everything from making your product to selling it happens inside one country. You've got one set of laws, one currency, and a culture you pretty much understand. But the second your business crosses a border, bam, you're on the world stage. And now you're juggling multiple sets of rules, different currencies, and all sorts of new customs, all at the same time. So let's get a little more specific. What exactly is international business? Well, officially, it's any transaction that crosses the borders of two or more countries. And this is way more than just shipping a box somewhere. We're talking about a McDonald's opening up in Japan through franchising, or a software company licensing its code in Germany, or even a car company building a whole new factory in Mexico. If it crosses a border, it counts.
And this right here is the heart of it all. Crossing that border isn't just some small logistical step. Oh no, it is a giant leap into a completely different universe of complexity and new challenges. We can actually break all this complexity down into 4 key areas or pillars. To really make it internationally, a business has to become an expert at navigating different rules, managing a bunch of currencies, getting to know totally different customers, and handling logistics that are, frankly, a world away from what they're used to. Each one of these is a huge deal.
So let's tackle that first pillar. Let's see just how much the legal and political game changes when you go global. Because this is where things can get really, really messy. Think about it this way. At home, you have one rule book. Sure, it might be a thick one, but it's just one. When you operate internationally, you suddenly have an entire library of rule books. You've got to follow the laws in every single country you're in, plus you have to worry about big international agreements. The legal complexity just explodes. And it shows up in some pretty wild ways. Take a simple business contract. In a place like the US that uses common law, that contract is your Bible. Every single detail has to be spelled out. But in a civil law country like Japan or France, a lot of stuff is already covered by the legal code, so contracts are way shorter. Can you imagine the chaos if your lawyers don't know which system they're playing in? It could be a disaster.
Okay, so legal stuff aside, let's talk about the people. Let's look at how different cultures, different customers, and of course, different kinds of money create a whole new playing field. This is really about understanding a new human landscape.
At home, you're usually dealing with a pretty similar group of customers. For the most part, they share a language, get the same cultural jokes, and have similar expectations. But internationally, it's a completely different ballgame. You're facing this incredible mosaic of different groups, and what's a bestseller in one country might be totally ignored, or worse, totally offensive in another.
And if you want the perfect and kinda hilarious example of getting this wrong, look no further. When Pepsi brought its slogan, "Come Alive with the Pepsi Generation" to China, the direct translation came out as, "Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the grave." Yikes. It's the classic example of why you can't just translate words. You have to understand the culture.
And then there's the money. The financial side of things gets a lot more intense too. For starters, it costs a ton more to set up shop overseas. But then you've got this thing called currency risk, something domestic companies never even think about. That's the risk that the money you make in another currency could be worth a lot less by the time you bring it home. Throw in insane logistics costs with shipping and customs, and you can see how the bills pile up fast.
This table is a fantastic summary of everything we've been talking about. It really lays it all out. Look down the list, from your market and money to your legal risks and customers, and you just see this massive jump in complexity when you go from a domestic to an international business. Okay, so after hearing about all of that, all the complexity, all the risk, you've got to be wondering, why on earth would any company do it? Why step into that bigger, crazier arena? Well, the answer is simple. The potential rewards are absolutely massive. I mean, the reasons are incredibly powerful. Suddenly, you have access to billions of new customers. You can spread out your risk, so if one country's economy takes a nosedive, you're still doing great elsewhere.
Making things for a global market can slash your costs. You might get your hands on new tech or resources you couldn't find at home. And of course, all of this can lead to way more profit and a seriously impressive global brand. To make that access to larger markets idea really sink in, just think about Starbucks. They operate in over 80 countries. Just let that number sit for a second. That's 80 different markets, 80 different cultures, 80 different sets of laws. It's an absolutely mind-boggling example of what's possible when you take a business international.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Going international isn't just like moving to a new office building. It is a fundamental, top-to-bottom transformation of your entire business. It means throwing out your old playbook and writing a completely new one. You're not just playing checkers on a bigger board. You're switching to 3D chess.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thing to chew on. In this crazy digital age, where we're all connected instantly and you can sell something to someone on the other side of the planet with a single click, are these national borders and all the complexity they bring becoming more important for businesses or less? It's a pretty interesting question to think about as technology keeps changing the game.